Something is attached to me, continued. Posted by user Judgment Ready on r/Ghost Stories. I recently posted on r/Ghost Stories about my experiences with something that has been attached to me since I was little. After reading all the comments, I decided to ask for some help. I had a friend come cleanse my apartment, and she showed me how to do it myself. She recommended I pray and meditate daily, as well as burn incense. I have been following her recommendations for a week or so now, and it has seemed to make my experiences far worse. The night after my friend cleansed my place, I was startled awake by feeling something jumping up onto the bed. I flipped on the light and saw that one of my slippers had been thrown approximately 4 feet across the apartment onto my bed. I left the lights on and prayed until I fell asleep again. When I woke up in the morning, clothes, shoes, and papers were scattered around my previously clean apartment. For that day and night, I did not experience anything else. I figured whatever my friend did helped. About 3 days after the cleansing, I was standing in my kitchen cooking when I heard scratching coming from the wall next to me. For context, that wall leads directly into my closet. I opened the closet door expecting to see a mouse or rat, but instead I found a tidy closet with nothing pushed against that wall. The wall is thin, basically just a sheet of drywall, so there was definitely nothing in the wall. The entire time I was cooking, the scratching continued and got louder. I turned on some music and tried to ignore it. That night, I felt something crawling up my bed almost like a dog or cat would. I have neither of those in my apartment. I had left the kitchen light on so I could see my room pretty well. I could see imprints of whatever was walking up my bed towards me. I freaked out and ran to the living room. I slept on the couch that night. My coworkers are still experiencing something walking in my camera during Zoom calls, and my clients have begun hearing whispering voices on my end of the phone even when I am home alone. The final experience that I have had since the cleansing was when I was sleeping over at my boyfriend's place. I had begged him to come and pick me up after the experience with the scratching. I had brought Missy with me, and we were all cuddled up in his bed watching TV. My boyfriend fell asleep, and I had turned off the TV when I heard some muffled footsteps outside his bedroom door. He has roommates, so I brushed it off and went to sleep. At around 3 a.m., my boyfriend sat straight up in bed and looked at the bedroom door. We have been dating for 2 years now and have been friends for 4. I have never once witnessed him sleepwalking or sleep-talking. He was saying things like, "No, you need to leave now," or "You can't stay here." He turned to me at one point and said, "He's here for you in the walkway." I was understandably freaked and tried to wake him up. He kept saying, "He's here. He's in the walkway. And you can't escape." I finally woke him up and asked him what was wrong and who was here, and he just said, "You should leave," and then fell back asleep. In the morning, when I asked him who was here, he shrugged and said that he had a dream that someone was in the hallway asking for me, and he agreed to let them talk to me. I have no clue what is going on, but the fact that my boyfriend invited whatever it was into his bedroom freaks me out. His roommate helped me cleanse the house the next day. My boyfriend has now started having scratching noises in the house, and his roommates have all claimed to hear voices when no one is home. I haven't had any experiences myself since the incident at my boyfriend's. We are currently looking into bringing my parish priest in to bless us and my apartment. Whatever it is, isn't violent, and it doesn't seem threatening, but it is very terrifying. Many of you suggested using a Ouija board or something else to talk to it, but I feel like that would make it worse and give it more energy to torment me. My mother had a bad Ouija board experience when she was young, and so did my father, so I will never touch it. Hopefully, my new daily regimen will help. I don't think I've been doing it for long enough to make a difference.
The house that freaked out the builders and landscapers. Posted by user Kent Tree Surgeon. Howth is a little village near Canterbury in Surrey, out on the old marshes that were once the Wonsum Channel. A few years ago, in 2014, my landscaping company were called to a job in a beautiful house there. The house was a converted barn and had been bought in by the new owners who wanted some work to be done there before moving in, as is often the case. So, the first step was to visit the property and take a look to come up with a price for the job. There was a great deal of land surrounding the property, with extensive gardens that had fallen into a state of disrepair. After visiting the property, I returned saying that the place gave me the creeps, and that although it was empty and isolated, several hundred yards from the nearest dwelling, it felt like I was being watched. Obviously, everyone laughed at me. I priced the job, which was a big one, and would need us to be on site for about 5 days, and forgot about the whole thing. As it turned out, we were given the contract for the garden clearance and various tree works, and we booked in for a few weeks' time. When we arrived on site, there was a crew of builders there already, who were working inside the house and living there for a couple of weeks while they carried out the renovations. When we arrived, we said our hellos, and John asked what they thought of the house. The reply was, "It's a lovely place, but it's haunted to shit." We laughed and asked why they thought that, and they told us that all night they could hear banging coming from empty rooms. The tools were being moved around, they heard whispering, and one had even received a phone call from a distant voice that couldn't be understood, from the number 000000000. He showed us the call record to prove it on his mobile phone. Interested, but still not entirely convinced, we got on with our work. Joe told us that the back courtyard garden gave him the willies, but apart from that day 1 was uneventful. On day 2, it was quiet in the morning. Then, in the afternoon, I went inside for a coffee. While I was there was knocking sounds coming from one of the back rooms. Nobody was in there, but it could well have been someone in one of the garden areas knocking against the wooden walls from outside while doing some job or another. But then, there was a sound like wallpaper being unrolled, or a poster falling off a wall, something like that. It came from the hall, then out of the hall. A shadow shot through the kitchen and out of the front door. I was alone in the house at the time, and after looking at every angle, the only way the shadow could have been cast was by the kitchen lights in the middle of the room. But there was nothing to cast it. I was starting to become a believer. On day 3, Paul, one of the builders, was having an argument with somebody on the phone. When he hung up, he said, "I can't believe that! The driver from the skip company says he won't come here to pick up the skip unless we can promise there's someone on site to meet him, because he reckons he saw something here when he dropped the skip off before we got here, and it's definitely haunted." When he did arrive, he said that when he dropped the skip off the first time, he knew the place was empty, but he saw someone moving around in there. And while he was unloading the skip, the radio in his lorry came on loud with a load of static. Day 4 was quiet apart from the knocking and banging, which we'd all got used to by then, even though it was louder than before, and definitely not one of us messing about. On day 5, a guy turned up to put in a new TV aerial, and it involved some wiring being fitted in the back room where most of the noises came from. A few hours in, he was having a coffee with everyone else in the kitchen, and said that he'd be glad when he was done, because that room was creeping him out. He said that he was sure he kept hearing someone walking around in there, but there was nobody inside the house, let alone in that room. The final thing that happened while we were working there was that another contractor turned up to do some light fittings and parked outside the house. While he was in there, his van radio came on really loud with a lot of static, just like the skip driver had said happened when he was there before. A few weeks after we'd been there, the new owners had moved in, and John and I went over to visit them and settle up the bill one evening after work. John was curious and asked the owner if he was enjoying living there. He obviously read between the lines a bit. Maybe he'd already been asked about the place by one of the other contractors, and he responded by saying, It's a beautiful house, but I must say, it takes on a completely different feeling at night. It's not such a nice place after it gets dark. We returned to work there a couple more times in smaller jobs, but as the clients were living there full time by then, we didn't spend much time in the actual house itself. But on one occasion, we were in the kitchen in the evening, having a cup of tea with the owner, when from the back room, there was a huge crash, like a wardrobe being pushed over. The owner just put his finger up and whispered, "Please just pretend you didn't hear that. We don't want the children to be scared." We do a lot of work on repossessed houses, no pun intended, and houses going through probate. So, we visit a lot of empty properties, often when the owner has recently died. And I have never, in over 10 years, been creeped out by a place like I was there.
Occurrences in my apartment. Submitted by user Chromehead to r/ghost stories. This is probably more weird shit that happened rather than a ghost story, but I've been just putting it together in my head recently. So early 2019 or so, could have been late 2018 though, I lived with my ex at the time and another roommate. The third roommate was constantly changing as we had a lot of flakes or people who didn't get along with in a row. My ex and I were not particularly getting along and mostly slept in our own rooms at night. What happened next coincided with the arrival of a new roommate who burned sage in our apartment when she first moved in. I began to hear taps on the ceiling at night in different corners of the room. Sometimes one loud bump in a certain spot. Sometimes multiple taps in succession around the upper perimeter of the room. I chalked this up to the apartment settling, though I had never heard those kind of sounds in all the years I've lived here. But it still gave me an uneasy feeling. I should note here that we have the top second-story apartment and don't have anyone living above us to make noises like that. There's a hallway that leads to all of our bedrooms, and one night I woke up to what I thought was the voice of a girl roommate who had recently moved out calling my name. I didn't get up to check. Around this time, I would suddenly just wake up anywhere from 2 to 4 a.m. randomly. I'm usually worn out from my workday and sleep through the night, but basically, every night during this, I was snapping wide awake overnight in that time frame. I began to get an unsettling feeling in my room. I distinctly heard a voice whisper, "Hey," one night as I was trying to sleep, off to the one side of my bed. I would hear what sounded like something coming home into the apartment in the evening, footsteps and doors opening and shutting, but no one would be there. I got an eerie feeling a few times of being watched in my shower. The bumps from my ceiling area continued more than anything, and the sense of a presence. One night, I was sitting on the edge of my bed when I definitely saw a shadow apparition off in my peripheral vision to the right, approaching toward me quickly. When I turned my head to look, there was nothing there, of course. After that, the activity seemed to calm down a bit, and the girl who burned the sage, whom we had many other problems with, moved out. The eerie feelings have all but ceased. I still hear some ceiling bumps at night, but they seem much less spread out around the room now. I've lived in this place for many years with no other encounters, but all of that definitely creeped me out. Thank you all for watching. If you want to find the original stories or the voice actors that read them, the links are in the description down below. If you like this sort of content, we will be posting Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays. All of this is being done for free and by a small independent team, so be sure to show some love. I hope you all stay creepy, stay safe, and have a gay day.